Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the latest confirmation of Boris Johnson breaking the rules, again, and taking no consequences whatsoever, again, and how this just adds to the general dissatisfaction with politics in this country. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So it has been confirmed that Boris Johnson broke the rules when he gave ACOBA, which is the Advisory Committee on Business Appointments, half an hour's notice of taking up a new job at the Daily Mail. Various people in government, including ministers and senior civil servants, have to give notice of appointments on leaving their government roles. For example, ACOBA decreed that Sue Gray should not be allowed to take up her job as Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff for 6 months, a period which has since elapsed, which is why she's now in her new role. But remember, it was Boris Johnson himself, as well as his cronies, who were baying for blood and demanding that Gray be banned from taking up the job with Labour for 2 years. Same rules, same group. Actually, the rules are technically a little bit lighter for ministers than they are civil servants. But, you know, roughly the same rules, same group, and yet Boris Johnson couldn't even be bothered to inform them of the change of role, let alone wait for them to decide to say how long he should wait before taking up the new job. No. It's like, oh, I've got a new job with the Daily Mail. Don't you need to tell ACOBA? Do I? Oh, okay, I'll tell ACOBA. ACOBA, I'm getting a new job with the Daily Mail. Okay, right, we'll have to work. When are you expecting to take this position up? In about half an hour. Right. You know, can't even be bothered to follow the standard rules, let alone the heightened ones he expected of others. So it's now been confirmed that Boris Johnson broke the rules, which is a surprise to nobody. He will also face no consequences. Again, a surprise to nobody. But the reasons given by Oliver Dowden on behalf of the government is astounding, even for him. He said it would be disproportionate to take action. You what? Disproportionate is the word you use when the punishment is excessive. Like, if someone were to suggest that Boris Johnson received 50 lashes for his offence, that would be disproportionate. Or if it were to be suggested he spend the rest of his natural life locked up in the Tower of London, that would be disproportionate. Maybe less so if you consider his many other offences, but in isolation, that would be disproportionate for this specific offence. But to say that any punishment would be disproportionate is to say that it is proportionate for someone to break a rule and receive no punishment. But a rule that is not enforced is no rule at all. There are only two ways to enforce a rule. The first is to make it physically impossible to break. Well, this clearly isn't the case here because he broke it. So too did Nadine Dorries, if we're keeping score, by the way, and I think Jacob Rees-Mogg as well with his work for GB News while we're on the subject. But Boris Johnson already has a reputation for ignoring the rules amongst the general public, and the Tories were badly stung by the accusations of one rule for us and no rules for them. The public don't really like that sort of behaviour. We're quite odd, the British public, really. Like, you can convince ordinary people in this country that those who went to Eton, live in mansions, talk in an accent so posh that their words are barely discernible, are somehow on the side of the common folk, but they still expect everyone to be bound by the same rules. Like, we have this serf mentality, as people will know, but we still collude in this illusion that everyone should be bound by the same rules. Like, so Partygate shattered that sort of bond with Johnson, if you like, for a lot of people. It really hit home. So being seen to let Boris Johnson off with even more rule breaking seems questionable, strategically speaking. Now, in this particular case, I don't think they're going to suffer badly. They've got a decent chance of getting away with it, given that the news is full of much worse behaviour, both inside and outside of politics. But it seems unnecessarily risky to me. After all, what do they think would happen by punishing Johnson with a genuinely proportionate response? That he'll kick up a stink within the parliamentary party? He's already trying to do that. That he'll kick up a stink within the wider party? He's already trying to do that. The timing's also interesting. It was Oliver Dowden, the Deputy Prime Minister, who said just weeks ago that he wanted to toughen up the rules for ex-ministers who breached the rules, that he wanted them to face standards equal to senior civil servants, because at the moment it's a little bit lax. So it seems odd that the very next thing he do, when he says he actually wants to tighten the rules up, is to apply no penalty whatsoever for a fairly in-your-face breach of the existing, albeit weak, rules. It's also an oddity that punishments are left to government ministers in general anyway. Like the ACOBA, there isn't like, it's not like ACOBA is this independent panel that then decides independently to impose certain penalties on groups or individuals. Because that's what watchdogs usually do. You know, within their sphere of influence, they apply penalties. And when it looks like they're not really applying much in the way of penalties, for example, Ofwat with water companies, it's because, you know, the government sets their guidelines. But the watchdog is technically independent. But ACOBA has no such power. Any penalties are applied directly by government ministers, which is a madness. Given that any penalties which may apply will be applied to civil servants but politicians, to leave the decision to politicians carries an obvious risk of corruption, and a corruption that can work both ways, because you might end up with a politically motivated attack, such as the hatchet job they attempted on Sue Gray, which didn't work in the end. Or you might get the reverse, where a minister takes no action because of the fear of political fallout, as is the case here. You know, we've already seen the weakness in the system when politicians are effectively responsible for self-regulation. You know, wrong-uns, whether it be bullies or sex pests, they're not taken to task because of the fear of how it will reflect on the wider organisation to do so. Like whether it's a political party covering for one of their MPs, or a TV station covering for like a rapist on their payroll. Self-regulation has been shown to fail every single time because there's too much invested interest in covering up, because you fear the reflection on the organisation. So what's needed is properly independent oversight of standards of behaviour in politics. You know, because we know it's tricky with politicians. You often hear the age-old question, who watches the watchman? And it's not an easy answer. But the answer is 100% not the watchman, right? It's not a good idea to let anyone really regulate themselves. But politicians are already a group of people who, if not downright corrupt themselves, and not all of them are, nonetheless easily fall prey to justifying poor behaviour on the premise of, oh, it's for the greater good. Oh, we don't do ourselves any good if we look shady, so we'll try and cover it up. Oh, there's an election soon. Oh, no, we have to be careful. Let's cover it up. No, take them out of the equation altogether when it comes to standards of behaviour. Even if relatively few people do find out that Boris Johnson has been let off yet again, for those who do find out, it's just another turn-off from politics, another reason to lose faith in politics, another reason to suppose that they're all just in it for themselves. After all, if someone comes out and say, oh, all these politicians, they're all just in it for themselves, where's the evidence to the contrary? But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.